But we never see the steady because there would be no story between them if there was steadiness. So
Actually, the only time you see Steady in Allie's life is when she's with the other guy. She's off with her friends shopping for the dress and she's doing other things. The only time you see her doing other things that are not consumed by a man is when she's in the other relationship.
if you're a person of a certain age, then you remember The Notebook as the pinnacle of romantic love in the early 2000s. It was positioned as one of the most romantic movies of the time. People were so smitten with Noah and Allie's relationship that it helped shape a generation's perception of love. But is this a good thing? Should we find Noah hanging off a Ferris wheel to get Allie to go out with him romantic? Is it actually cute that he wrote her letters every day for a year without ever getting a reply? Is it really a sign of enduring love if someone we dated at 17 built us our dream house after we broke up? This is Unsilenced, a JBWS podcast where we have real conversations about abuse. Today, we're releasing an episode I recorded several months ago with
Jane McCarthy. I am the Community Education and Training Manager at JBWS.
That's why I'm in a different location, although I am still wearing the same shirt. Now, the intent of this episode is not to hate on your favorite movie. It's simply to explore how elements of abuse are normalized in media and how that can have a negative impact on people watching these movies. In this episode, we explore the appeal of such an intense love. We break down the problematic elements of their relationship and discuss how these red flags could escalate into real world problems. But before we get into the show, please take a moment to follow Unsilenced because it really helps us to increase our reach. Okay, now on to the episode. What do you think it is about this story that resonates with people and has for such a long time?
I think part of it is that idea of young love that then grows old, right?
Mhm.
And this idea that, don't want to give too many spoilers, but that this couple is still together after everything that they went through. So I think that's what resonates and what captivates people. Even though she is struggling now, he's still there and by her
Mhm.
side, right? And I think that that's what most people want. They want that person that's going to be with them through thick and thin, through everything, really holding true to that, sickness and in health and better for worse.
It is pretty interesting to me how much is in the movie that is really problematic. And there is a lot here. So we're going to like go through it chronologically. All right. So let's start with the festival. So that's the
Mhm.
first time that you already know where this is going.
Yes,
um,
yes.
but that's the first time that Noah sees Allie. And so when he sees her, time completely stops. Like even in the movie slows down and his focus is entirely on her. Can you
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about the role of sudden intense love in abusive relationships? Why are they an indication of trouble rather than a blooming romance?
Part of it is this idea like that everything is all encompassing in this person and that we
Mhm.
lose all of ourself to this person that he doesn't even know, right? And all of a sudden, his whole world becomes about her, and we're
Mhm.
completely losing him. When we do that, and when we just completely become absorbed in the other person,
Mhm.
then we have nothing else to kind of keep us going if things go wrong.
I think what you said about losing yourself and becoming so fixated on another person that it becomes all consuming is a really good point because it also leads Noah to literally the infamous Ferris wheel scene where within seconds of meeting Allie, he's asking her out, saying, I want to take you out. You want to dance with me? Let's go out. And she's with another dude and she's like literally on a date. And she's like, no, I'm not interested at all. No, thank you, whatever. And then he literally jumps onto the Ferris wheel into their car and then is like, why won't you go out with me?
And when she continues to reject him, he starts dangling like 30, 50, whatever feet up in the air, and then lets go of one arm. So he's literally dangling by
One
one
arm.
hand, saying, go out with me or I won't grab this bar. Basically saying to her, you're at fault here if I fall because you won't agree to go out with me. So
Yeah.
break this down for me. What is he doing here and why is it wrong?
So it's all sorts of forms of manipulation are going
Mm-hmm.
on here, right? First of all, he's not taking no for an answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's even back up before he even gets on the Ferris wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he gets in her face. He's right up in her face, which is a very aggressive stance for anybody
Mm-hmm.
to take. He's blocking her way, right? So she doesn't have anywhere to go. And then she tells him no, she rejects him,
Mm-hmm.
and he just keeps going. I've seen that in a lot of different romance things where they're acting like if I just keep pushing, the person
Mm-hmm.
will say yes.
Yep.
And it's indications of signs that down the road, this isn't going to be healthy
Mm-hmm.
because they can't take no, they can't take the rejection. And then to threaten, he's basically threatening suicide.
Yeah,
Either go
absolutely.
out with me or I will kill myself. First of all, threats of suicide are extremely serious and should always be taken seriously,
Yeah.
right? But not to give the person what they want,
Mm-hmm.
right? But a lot of times in abusive relationships, people will use, I will kill myself
Mm-hmm.
as a way to get the person to do what they want them to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? To get the partner to do what they want. And that is a big indication of not only somebody actually make attempt suicide in the future, but
Mm-hmm.
it is also one of the things we ask on danger assessments because it's an indication of homicidality as well, right? Where you have
Interesting.
the homicide suicide. So it's something that really needs to be taken seriously
Mm-hmm.
and not just brushed aside of, oh, he was just doing a grand gesture. No, that's not a grand gesture.
Mm-hmm.
That's very serious behavior.
Yeah, and
Very
she
serious.
sounds absolutely terrified. She's literally
Yeah.
screaming. And he's like, say it again that you want to go out with me. And she says it like multiple times. And what I think is kind of interesting about this is then she ends up pantsing him and it kind of dilutes the seriousness
Sure.
of it. And it almost makes it this kind of joke of like, oh, this wasn't really that scary. Like, see, like I got you back. This is
Yeah.
equal. And I think that's indicative too of the lack of seriousness that scene was received with, And I think this really leads directly into another point, which is why do you think we as a society tend to see this one-sided pursuit as attractive? How often do you hear, oh, she wore him down, or he wore her down, or them down? And it's almost seen as this good job, way to be persistent. You stay on what you want, and eventually, if you're dedicated enough, you'll get it in the end. Why is this a dangerous way of thinking?
I think one, we see it as a society as a good thing because if you think about it in other aspects of life, that is
Mm-hmm.
a good quality,
True.
right? Like you want the job, you stick with it, you keep going for it, you apply for the different things, right? You want the raise, you keep asking for it, you work hard, you get there. So in other aspects of our society, it is a good quality. But the problem is you're not dealing with another person or
Mm-hmm.
getting another person to come to your side. In this situation, you're dealing with another person and their wants. And if we really care about another person, then we need to be listening to what they're saying their wants are,
Mm.
right? If we really love somebody and that person is telling us they don't want to be with us, this is not what I want, then if you truly love that person, you let them go. To truly have a healthy romance and a healthy love, you need to listen to what that other person is saying to you. And
Yeah.
when we don't do that, when we just keep pushing, when we keep pushing, we don't take that no, that's an indication that I don't care what you want or what
Mm.
you need. I
Mm-hmm.
only care about what I want or what I need.
And it worked in this movie.
Mhm.
So if you have this epic love story that it's depicted as, then you think, okay, maybe this will work. And that is the messaging that's really dangerous in media. So after the festival, Noah sees Allie again on the street. And he says something like, when I see something I like, I go crazy for it. And says, I could be whatever you want. Just tell me what you want and I'll be that for you. You touched upon this a little bit earlier, but why is that not how things should be working?
There's two issues with that, right? Like one is he's admitting that he'll do whatever she wants. He'll change everything about himself to fit into the mold that she wants.
Mm-hmm.
And two, that's not maintainable,
No.
right? Over time. So if I'm more of an introverted person. If I was going out on a date and was like, you know what, I love being around groups and I love to party and I love to do all these things. Yeah, okay, I can fake that for a little while, but over time, I'm not gonna keep going to all
Over
these
time, you're on the
things.
couch.
Yeah, I'm on the couch in my sweats at 8 o'clock and don't want to do anything, right? And that's going to cause issues in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it also goes to we're not being honest with ourselves and with that other person. And a relationship, a healthy relationship is based on trust. And if I'm lying about who I am, well, then did that person really even fall in love with the real me?
Yeah.
And that's going to cause a lot of tension over time, right? And a lot of resentment.
Yeah, it's like the other person is falling in love with a fictional character, and that's not fair to either of you. It's just not going to end well.
Yeah.
So eventually the pair do end up together, as we know it's a love story. And there's a quote, they're at a movie and then they get together. And the quote is, after that night, Allie and Noah spent every waking hour together, and soon they were inseparable. How can you tell the difference between the excitement of a new crush versus the signs of an unhealthy, like all-consuming relationship? Where is that line, would you say?
There needs to be balance. You still need to have your life and your commitments and your likes and your friends, right? You join things together. Any relationship, especially long-term relationship, you're going to start to come together and join things. But that actually should be a slower process. When we do it too fast, again, it's that all-consuming part of it, right? Which is really based in more in lust than in love. And it becomes all consuming, and that's not maintainable over time, right? I can't spend every waking moment with my husband, whether I want to or not. We have jobs, we have lives, we have commitments, right? So it's not something that's maintainable. And then we're losing part of who we are to fit into this. And if we think about it, when we spend time apart, one, that's keeping our own identity, that's keeping the other relationships that we have alive, it's keeping our other interests alive, but it's also giving us time apart to miss each other and to trust each other and to build that understanding and trust of the other person, which when we're together all the time, we can't do that. Right? There is no need for trust. I don't need to trust that when you go to work, you're going to work, but you're not going.
Yeah.
So there's multiple things that actually time apart does for us. And then too, if something happens, right? Like let's say I put everything I have into this relationship and I'm always with this other person, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah. Who are you?
Who am I? And that's when you can also see people hold on so tight to relationships that aren't working because they've put everything they have into this other person. Their whole identity is wrapped up in this other person. So who am I if I don't have this other person?
I think that all-consuming nature, you put it perfectly, because it does feel almost like, you call it kind of like a moth to a flame. It just feels this intense draw. So you want to spend time with them. And then in an abusive relationship, I do feel then there's sometimes an expectation to spend time. And then it gets out of control because at first you want to, and then you feel, kind of trapped in it. And that's really, really dangerous. So there's a lot of themes in this movie that kind of parallel these abusive relationships, even if other people don't see it that way. And I think that that is kind of an interesting element of this. we've been talking a lot about Noah's behavior, but there's also Allie's behavior.
Allie's behavior is not great either.
I know. And I think that that's interesting because, I mean, as the movie progresses, there's tons of fights between them where Allie becomes physically violent. And, this is a trigger warning for discussing violence right now, but, she slaps him across the face, repeatedly pushes him, smacks his head. And, what do you make of her behavior? And why is a woman using violence against a man seen as less than a man using violence against a woman? Because I think there's a double standard there.
Oh, there definitely is. I mean, imagine if he hit her.
Oh my God, it would be banned.
It would, yeah, we wouldn't be watching it. But definitely there's that double standard because women naturally, for most part, are not as strong as men, right? So the damage that she's doing to him is not that severe in most people's eyes.
Yeah.
Right. But it is an indication of she thinks it's okay to hit him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they even portray it as okay, that this is just all this emotion and love and chemistry between them,
passion.
That they're fighting like this, right? The passion that they have for each other is this fighting, and the violence is part of it.
Oh yeah.
Right? And they show it too. Like either they're kissing and making out, or they're fighting and hitting each other. Well, that's not love.
Yeah.
Right. That I'll agree that's heightened passion, maybe, but it's not romantic passion. Trying to get somebody else to comply with you through physical violence. And that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to sway him to her side, or to get him to comply with whatever she wants in that moment by using physical violence. So that's definitely abusive behavior. That's not romantic or loving. And the idea that, well, if we love each other and we're so passionate, that's why we fight all the time.
Yes.
And no, right? You're going to have disagreements, but the sign of a loving relationship is that we can have disagreements and we can talk through them. We can work through them. We can either agree to disagree, or we can find some common ground, or work with each other to figure out how to face this thing. But if we're fighting with each other all the time and can't have a conversation that doesn't lead to, and except for when they're older, there are no conversations really that they show of the two of them.
I know.
Where it doesn't end in them screaming at each other.
Yeah, it's so interesting. There's one scene where Allie slaps him across the face. It's really early on, and then Noah chases after her and they start making out intensely. And it's interesting because in the movie, their fighting is like almost seen, you're right, as the opposite side of love. It's like, I love you so much, I'm going to fight with you. And there's a few lines in the movie about how they're constantly fighting. And it says something like, they didn't agree on much. In fact, they rarely agreed on anything. They fought all the time and challenged each other every day. And Noah even says, I'm not afraid to hurt your feelings, and says that she's like basically a pain 98% of the time. And so you said this a little bit earlier, but obviously fights are going to happen between couples and in any type of relationship. But when does it cross a line into that fighting becoming abusive rather than a normal disagreement?
If you are finding yourself putting the other person down, calling them names, screaming at them, and there's a difference between getting loud and screaming at someone, right? When you're kind of in their face and just yelling everything directly at them,
right?
That's screaming at someone, right? Which is different than just I get heated and I get loud, right?
Right.
Especially baby of a big family, I can get loud. Right? Like it happens.
Yeah.
But if I'm in your face yelling at you or pointing at you, or you should be doing this, right? Like that's screaming at someone. The fact that he tells her she's a pain 98% of the time.
Oh yeah.
Right? You're saying these things of like, do you even like this person?
Right? That's what I thought.
Yeah, like half the time I'm like, do they even like each other? I get that there's chemistry there, but that's all I'm seeing here.
When you're not kissing in the rain, what are you doing? Like, how are you having a nice conversation over Scrabble? Like, what's happening here?
Like, are they even having even when they're sitting having like the romantic dinner?
I know.
They start arguing, right? Like, can you have a conversation with this person where, okay, maybe you don't see eye to eye on everything, but are you getting along?
Yeah.
Right. And that's where I would say like it goes to abusive. Are you able to have any conversation where the other person, you feel heard by the other person? Not necessarily agreed with, right? It's okay if you don't agree with me, but are you hearing me? Are you showing me that you can hear what I'm saying to you and take it in? Can you contemplate what I'm saying instead of just saying no or arguing with me? But definitely the name calling and the put downs and the diminishing what she's saying. Because there was,
Yes.
I made a note like he in the movie, whenever she doesn't agree with him and like she's doing whatever her parents want or what
Mhm.
she wants, then she's not being true to herself,
Yes, I noticed that too.
right?
Mhm.
If she's agreeing with him, everything's fine.
Yep.
But if she has a difference of opinion, then you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah. What do you want, Allie? Like, think about
Yeah.
you. And it's like, maybe she is.
Maybe she is. Maybe she wants to go to college. Maybe she
Yeah.
wants to have the big house and the different things, right? Like that, there's nothing wrong with that. When we build a relationship with somebody, we need to kind of be on the same page with the big things, right? Like,
Yeah.
where do we see our lives going? What do we want out of life? If we're not agreeing on it, we're fighting over that all the time.
Yeah.
It's not going to end well. And to just be fighting all the time. Like that's what I keep going back to, like the fact that they just are fighting and it's fights. It's not disagreements. It's
Oh,
fights,
fights. Yeah.
right? And that's a problem.
And they're so intense. And, you
Yeah.
know, I think obviously one of these fights eventually leads to their breakup.
Mhm.
And then after they break up, they go their separate ways for an entire year. We have to get to the letters now.
Yeah.
Okay.
The letters.
For an entire year, Noah writes Allie 365 letters that remain unanswered for a year. So we are led to believe it's a very strong moment in the film when Allie reads the letters and she's like, oh my God, I love Noah. So we are led to believe that this behavior of him writing her every day, despite never getting a response, is romantic. Why is it actually kind of unsettling?
Kind of stalkerish if you think about it.
Yeah,
Right? Like it's she told him at the end that she didn't love him, that she doesn't want to
I
be with him,
know.
right? And
Yes.
in the breakup, right? In that breakup
Yeah.
scene. And it is sad because you know that that wasn't what they wanted. But even that, let's stop there for a second. Threatening to end a relationship to get your way
Mm-hmm.
is again a tool of manipulation because we do see that in abusive relationships, the threat to leave, the
Mm-hmm.
threat to end the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to end the relationship, then end the relationship,
Right.
right? You don't threaten to end the relationship because it's again manipulation to get the person to comply with what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So she's trying to manipulate him to get him to agree
Yeah.
to stay, right?
True. Good point.
So then for him to continue to write her with no response, that's an indication that the person doesn't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, like, and again, it goes back to that if you truly love somebody, you listen. And listening isn't always just to the words that are coming out of the person's mouth, it's the behaviors.
Yeah.
Right? And part of that behavior is she's not responding.
Right.
So she's saying, now I know her mother took the letters
Yeah. But he
but
doesn't know that.
he doesn't know that. And so all he knows is she's not responding to him. Well, then it's time to move forward,
Yeah.
right? It's time to let go. You see this in a lot of different things where this idea of holding on to this love for this other
Mm-hmm.
person is seen as romantic,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I hold on to it forever and I'm always in love with this
Yeah.
person. Well, that's not healthy. That's not romantic. If you love somebody and the breakup happens and everything, you can still want what's best for them and want good
Mm-hmm.
for them, but to be consumed by them,
Mm-hmm.
again, that's not love. That's
Right.
obsession.
Which we can see in him building a house for her.
He
Like,
builds a house for her and he starts drinking all the
oh
time.
yeah.
You
His
know, he
life
becomes an
goes completely.
alcoholic. His life goes off. He's sleeping with other women while thinking about
Oh yeah.
her. That's obsession. That's not love.
So after seeing Allie with her new fiance, Lon, there's a quote that says, something inside Noah snapped. He got the notion in his head that if he restored the old house where they had come that night, Allie would find a way back to him. Now, this whole business with the house, I can't help but feel like the only reason that we think it's cute or that people think it's cute is because they ended up together. But could you imagine if they didn't? Like, think about this. If a guy you dated for one summer when you were 17 and haven't seen in several years builds you a house exactly as you said you wanted, as you were 17, complete with a room full of painting supplies, that's horrifying. Like, that is literally the premise of like a horror movie. Like,
Oh
call
yeah.
Jordan Peele. I've got a great screenplay for him. Like, what do you
Oh
make
yeah.
of this?
That's like he's gonna kidnap her
I
and hold her
know.
in the room with the paints, right? Like,
Yeah,
like
somebody's
where are
gonna
the
write a book
chains?
about it.
I didn't see them in the side of the room. But
It was
that
terrifying.
yeah, yeah. This guy is so obsessed with her and holds on so tightly to
Yeah.
this that it's creepy. And
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think you easily could turn that into a horror movie.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, I couldn't help but think that they spend the night together and then he leaves like a series of arrows for her to go into the painting room. And I thought to myself, oh my God, when did he get all these paints? Did he always have them set up for her? And
yeah.
if so, that almost gives serial killer vibes to me
Mhm.
of like trophies and collections. And it's weird to me that she's so overcome by it of like, oh, this is so beautiful when I think you're right here that we tend to think, oh my God, obsession is real love. Like, if only somebody loved me, they would do this much for me. They would build me a house. But he didn't build her a house that she asked for in the moment. This was something that they had casually talked about, at least in the movie,
Yeah.
several years prior, that he then carried out in this devotion of love, which is really kind of unsettling. But
Settling, and it's obsessive. It's
yes,
definitely obsessive. If we look at it from any other point of view, where she maybe doesn't still love him, right?
yeah,
Or she cares about him, but she doesn't want to be with him anymore.
yeah,
She's moved on with her life. She has this other romance. She has a fiance, and
it's
he's
creepy.
still pining over her and obsessed with her.
It makes you wonder what would have happened if she didn't love him. Like,
Yeah.
would he have escalated? Would he have let things go? And that's when it gets really concerning.
What if she rejected him, if she shows up,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because she saw it, and just, how many of us have gone to see a friend or even an old boyfriend or
Yeah.
girlfriend that we knew in high school
Hmm.
and, like at a reunion
Of
or at something
course.
else, right? And go and
Yeah.
see them and just be like, hey, how are you doing? What's
Yes.
up?
Yeah.
And you pull up and they've focused and obsessed over something we said 10 years ago,
I
right?
would
And
start crying.
I'd be like, dude, you need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's sweet and all. Yay. I gotta go.
I'm getting back in
Yeah.
my car, actually.
Yeah. Like, well, my fiance's waiting for me.
Bye.
He
Yeah.
knows I'm here.
Yeah, but I mean, Noah has a habit of these grand gestures. I mean, even think about the house, the letters, the Ferris wheel, crossing through traffic when he sees her by chance, and then also literally moving into a nursing home when he doesn't need it, which like
Yeah.
I don't know how that family has that much money, but whatever. But we all love to be treated like we're special, of course.
Mhm.
But why are these grand gestures actually signs of an unhealthy relationship?
It is hard sometimes because we all want to be loved and again, we
Yes.
want that to be heard, right? And kind of what he's showing there is that he did hear her. He heard all of her wishes and what her wants and all of these
Hmm.
things. So I don't want to kind of downplay that. She feels very special in that
Hmm.
moment. But the problem is, right, with these grand gestures is, again, it's obsessive,
Oh yeah.
right? And it's not asking the person, is this what you want? Or having a discussion about how we do these things together. It's
Hmm.
just deciding for them that this is what I'm going to do. I think of like all of those commercials with the cars at Christmas time with the
Hmm.
bows and the person
Hmm.
wakes up and here's your car. Well, did I agree to buying the car? Did
Right.
I, like that's a big purchase that
Hmm.
did you ask me? Like, are we paying monthly payments now? Like,
Right.
what's
Did you
happening
steal
here?
this? How did we get this
Right.
car?
Like, you just bought me a $50,000 car. Cool. Did you take that out of our savings account? Like, where did that,
Yeah.
maybe let's talk about this, right?
Yeah.
Because what it's showing is that idea of I can make all the decisions.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
I don't need your input. Like, you gave some input. You said, I like this car,
Yeah.
right? Or I like this house, but I wasn't consulted on the commitment of that,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a big commitment. Any big thing is a big commitment, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
money, time, energy, whatever it is. It's this idea that I don't have to listen to you, or I don't have to
Mm.
discuss this with you. Right? I can make the final decision. I have the final say.
Wow, that is a really good perspective on it that I didn't even consider, but you're absolutely right. And Noah literally builds his entire life around Allie. And I think, the real emotional moment of the movie comes at the end when she remembers him and they die together in bed. They go out together as one. And, this is seen as, oh my God, this is so sweet. It's like Romeo and Juliet, but,
Yeah.
older people. But it's always bothered me because their death is so romanticized. And part of me thinks, okay, Noah, what would you have done if Allie died and you kept living?
Yeah.
Why is that a problem to make your life so dependent on another person that, like, who would he have been if he didn't
What
have
if
her anymore?
what if she decided not to marry him?
Ooh, mm-hmm.
What if she had chosen Lon? She started building this whole life with Lon. What if
Yeah.
she had chosen him? What would have happened to Noah,
Ooh.
right? If she had said no. And he's given glimpses of what would happen if she said no.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's not you really saying that. That's
Mm-hmm.
not you. You don't want that. That's you complying with everybody else.
That
I'll
gave
show
me
you what you
chills.
really want.
Oof.
Right? Because we've already seen those glimpses of him having that attitude. I
Yeah.
know what you really want. You don't. Oh, you silly woman, you don't know what you really want. Because
Yes.
that's the message that I was getting from that.
Oh yeah.
Whenever he said those things, oh, you're just going along with everybody else. You don't really know what you really want. I know what you really want. Right?
That's even seen when they're laying in the street and she's like saying, "Oh, I do French, I take these lessons, I do all
Mhm.
this studying." And he's like, "You don't like that though." And she's like, "What do
Right.
you mean?" "Yes, I do." And you're right, like it's exactly that.
He's deciding what she really likes, and then but manipulating it and twisting it so that she thinks that it's really her. And so that idea of him dying with her, yeah, anybody who's been married for a long time and loves the other person, like the idea of having to be on your own,
Yeah.
nobody wants to think about that time, right? Like it's sad and it's hard.
Mhm.
But that's part of the issue with being all consumed with the other person
Mhm.
is that if we don't have our own things, our own likes, our own hobbies, our own friends, when that other person goes away, whether it's by choice or by death, then where does that leave us? Right? Because we have nothing. And it's almost like he can't go on without her. He
Literally.
has to die with her because he has no identity
Yeah.
except for her. That's why he's in the nursing home too. He has no
Literally.
identity except for with her. And his kids are begging him
And
to
he
leave.
has kids. Like, how do
He
they
has kids.
feel? He has a
Yeah.
whole life outside.
And they kind of show how they feel. They're begging him to leave,
Oh,
right? They've said in the scene with the kids, they say like, "Dad, come home. We'll all take turns taking care of mom. We'll all come and see
yeah.
her. We'll all do these things." And he's so consumed with her that he
Yeah.
can't leave. He can't think of a life without her in it.
Yeah, and that's the thing is people have seen his devotion and his unwavering love for her as so beautiful and romantic and the pinnacle of a love story in the last 20 years when really if you strip it away, what is his life without her? I
Yeah,
mean, it's nothing, unfortunately,
nothing.
and I think that he is very clear about it. Even says like that's my sweetheart, she's my home. Like this is where I belong. And that kind of behavior, God forbid she did decide to leave him, I think could potentially lead him to act in ways that are even more abusive, you
Right,
know? And
right.
that's where it gets really scary. So if we are kind of glorifying this and saying this is the absolute way you should be acting, we have to be careful about the messaging that we're putting out.
When we show this obsessive love, it's saying that because I love you and because I'm attracted to you, I have to change everything about me or change everything about you. And I've got to contort everything and twist everything to make us fit together and to make it work. And in the end, we end up losing one or both of the people because they've gone through so much change and so much twisting and so much bending and so much contorting to make it work that we're no longer who we were originally.
Yeah.
And that's not romance. That's not love.
And it doesn't show any of the in between. We only ever see Noah and Allie in pain. They're in pain because they're together and it's so much and their parents don't want it. They're in pain because they're apart. They're in pain because she's dying. And I guess they're both dying. But we never see the steady, because there would be no story between them if there was steadiness. So
Actually, the only time you see steady in Allie's life is when she's with the other guy.
I know. Isn't that fascinating?
Because she's off with her friends shopping for the dress and she's doing other things, right?
Dancing.
She has a
and
life,
da,
she
da,
has a
da.
career.
Oof, that's a good insight.
The only time you see her doing other things that are not consumed by a man is when she's in the other relationship.
Wow. Yeah, it's what an interesting movie. So
Yeah.
before we close, do you have any other closing thoughts that you want to add? Something that we didn't get to that you wanted to point out?
No, I think we touched on everything. I'm looking back. I have my own notebook during the movie
A
as
different
well.
kind of notebook, if you will.
Yes. I think, just be careful of that obsessive, right? If you find
Mhm.
yourself completely losing yourself in somebody else or bending everything to that other person
Mhm.
or wanting to bend to that other person,
Mhm.
take a step back, right? Take a break. I think that's where we really need to look at is how does this is great when it's,
Mhm.
yeah, we have all this chemistry, but how is that going to translate over time? And most
Yeah.
of the time, not well.
Yeah, it's kind of like the difference between a gentle fire in a fireplace that can sustain and it's nice and life-giving in some ways, and then a forest fire that's a blaze, it's strong, and it burns down the forest. And I think that's how a friend explained it to me once, and I was like, that is such a good example.
Thank you, Mary Jane, for taking the time to analyze the notebook with me. While it may seem trivial to some, we think it's important to look at how these portrayals of romance might inadvertently normalize unhealthy or even abusive relationships. We're not asking you to walk away from this episode hating the notebook. We just want you to be informed of the problematic behaviors within Noah and Allie's relationship so you don't confuse abuse for romance. Thank you for listening to this episode of Unsilenced, Real Conversations About Abuse. This podcast is produced by JBWS, a domestic violence agency serving Morris County, New Jersey. Please let us know what topics you would like covered on this podcast by sending an email to podcast@jbws.org. Please note that this email address is only intended for content relating to the podcast. It is not meant to offer immediate assistance or access to services. If you live or work in Morris County and think you might be in an unhealthy relationship, JBWS is here to help. Please visit our website at jbws.org to learn more about our services, or call our 24-hour helpline to speak to members of our staff at 1-877-782-2873. If you recognize controlling or abusive behaviors in yourself, JBWS can also help change those behaviors. Through our Jersey Center for Nonviolence, JBWS offers programs for men, women, and adolescent males who have used abusive or controlling behaviors in their relationships. Please visit jbws.org/JCNV or call 973-539-7801 to learn more. If you don't live in Morris County, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Domestic violence grows in silence, so thank you so much for listening and helping us break through that silence through these types of conversations. Please follow us on social media and continue to share our content to get as many people talking about domestic abuse as possible.